Welcome to the Navigator Podcast.
Welcome to the Navigator Podcast and some special bonus content for Navigate Academy Module 58, Building Your Bench. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce our special guest, Chris Bianchet. Chris is a seasoned leader with an incredible 30-year career in the AV industry. Starting out in sales, Chris quickly carved out his own leadership style, rising to become Senior Vice President of Systems Integration at AVI SBL. He later co-founded Herman Integration Services, where his passion for team building and talent development became a defining feature of his leadership. Chris has consistently left his mark by building strong teams, enhancing company brands, and adding lasting value. He's also guided organizations through successful mergers and acquisitions with a focus on empowering people and creating opportunities for growth. Today, Chris serves as General Manager and Vice President of Herman Integration Services, where he continues to grow the business by cultivating winning teams and fostering innovation. Chris, it's an honor to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Patrick. It's great to be here.
Always good to have you. So, Chris, in the recent Navigate Academy webinar, we talked about the importance of companies building their bench. Why do you believe that it's critical for companies to prioritize this?
So, yeah, building the bench has always been a big part of what our business was always about. Hiring talent is and it's gotten more and more tricky as the years have gone by, right? And I think it's more critical than ever to be building that bench, because all you're really doing is, if you're not building the talent, you're trying to take talent from somewhere else, right? And we've watched over the years in the AV industry, it was always a bidding war to find the right technical staff or the right salespeople. And, we always joke about in our industry, everybody's always got, at Infocom, a new logo on their shirt. But the reality is, if you're building the right folks, you're creating that culture that they can, obviously build to the next level in your company. Again, this also comes with your overall culture for your company. It has to be a great place to work, and you have to, make sure these people feel like they're moving along, and you've got to pay them appropriately. It's always been interesting, because we always had seen over the years, somebody leaves, and then you're like, oh, we probably should have paid them a little bit more, because the replacement's going to cost me more money anyway. And now there's the months of time that you lose training these people, getting them, do they fit your culture? Because let's face it, we all interview people, and then we learn that, well, maybe they weren't really the right fit. So, I mean, it should always be a priority, and definitely something, we've tried to do, but it's a challenge. It's not easy, because if you're a smaller organization, you don't have the levels of people within that organization. So it's hard to say, well, geez, we'll take these guys on, and they'll be junior whatever, and one day they'll be project managers, they'll be program managers, or whatever it is. So, you've got to be very strategic in that, and making sure that you've got a good plan to make sure you're maximizing everybody.
And Chris, I think the thing that you touched on a couple of times there was how they fit in your culture. If we're constantly looking to recruit somebody away from another organization, we're never really sure how they're going to fit into our culture.
Exactly.
And you're just establishing that people strategy, as we like to call it here. What's our strategy for growing our team and aligning our people that we have with our growth ambitions as well?
Absolutely.
So I know from working with you for a long time that connecting with the people on your team is something that you value deeply. How does that connection support the concept of building a strong bench?
It's a great question. I've spent my career, especially years ago, reading lots of books on how you build businesses and cultures. And I've always felt, and I'm a people person, right? I love to be out in front and talking to people and engaging. And, one of the things that I always prided myself on, and you may remember this in the early days when we worked together, my first thing every morning as I came in, I put my laptop in my office, and I walked around and said, good morning to everybody. And I knew a little something about everybody, if they were having a tough time with something, or they had a kid on the way, or they were buying a new car, whatever it is. And I always just tried to make sure that everybody knew that I was accessible. My door was always open. You could come in and talk to me. With Herman, one of the things I did for the first several years that I always prided myself on, not only just having, communications with the teams in the field on a regular basis, because when you've got a nationwide team, they're not in the office every day. So it was a much different environment. But I traveled all over. I would go see customers in a market, and then I would make sure I had a dinner scheduled with those technicians. And the technicians used to love it, because it was like, wow, the owner of the company's coming and sitting down with me, and we're having dinner together. And, it was always funny, because the first thing would be like, I'd order a glass of wine. which made it okay for them to have a drink. And you learned more about your business talking to the guys who were in front of your customers and out there. And I think it was what allowed us to, grow so quickly as an organization, because there was this camaraderie. They felt, I would get ridiculous emails from some of my employees in the middle of the night. They felt that comfortable reaching out to me. So building that level of culture, and again, you have to also make sure you keep it, there's a line too, right? Like, I wouldn't say we were all best of friends, but they knew I was approachable. I was somebody that was there to support them, and I listened. Listening to your employees is paramount. So,
And listening, we talk about listening a lot in some of our other leadership podcasts and webinars. I think in your case, what I always experienced was that there was a true genuosity around when you asked how I was doing or how somebody was doing and you wanted to know more about them. You genuinely wanted to know, because you'd come back 3 weeks or 3 months later and you'd follow up on that. Hey,
right.
how's the new baby? When's the new baby coming along? That helps you get that stickiness of your team and get people to want to stay as part of your culture and be part of that bench that you're building. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, leadership is key.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So for you, and especially when we look at your time at AVI-SPL, but also your what you've done at Herman Integration Services, what is your approach to developing talent, particularly growing people into those leadership or management roles for the first time?
Yeah, this is honestly an area that now I'm at the point that I'm at that I don't think I did the greatest job of sometimes. I can look back now on the leaders that I've grown, and we've had a lot of people, especially on the Herman side of things. At AVI-SPL, we hired very competent people to run offices, and I was there to be there. Even though they reported to me, I always felt like I was the guy that was helping them with their problems with their office and getting the corporate support, and I enjoyed that role. With Herman, though, we built that from the ground up, day one. I think the one biggest thing that I learned as a leader, because you want to empower your folks to make decisions and do things. And it's interesting because now with our partnership with Field Nation, we talk about a culture of that it's okay to fail so long as you learn, which is good to an extent. You don't want to fail too bad and you don't want to fail too often, and you want to make sure you learn from those failures. And I've always joked I've made every mistake in the industry, and it's helped me get to where I'm at today, because I don't like making the same mistake twice. But really empowering people, but still keeping your finger enough on there. Like, you can't micromanage all their decisions, but I don't know that I always gave everybody the autonomy that they fully needed to get to the next level. And that's something, that I'm trying now to look more at with my team and saying, let's make those decisions, come back and let me know how it works out, as opposed to, keep me in the loop on everything. But, when you're building businesses and growing, I think every leader's biggest challenge is stepping out of knowing what's going on every step of the way. Because true entrepreneurship is, it's a blessing and a curse. It's why most entrepreneurs eventually go on, sell their business, and move away, because the business outgrows their ability to keep their hands in everything. And that's kind of a lot of what I see in myself and just watching our own industry. A lot of really great, talented people built the business to the point where they were like, this is where I got to go. And the next group of people come in and take over. And, a lot of times it's successful, and sometimes it's, because you do lose that culture when you lose that leadership. So that's the other side of it.
And I'll counter that, Chris, because I've seen it in a number of places. We get insightful people that come up with a great idea and they grow a business to a certain point, and a couple of things can happen. They either have done exactly what you said, they've built a team, and then they're able to step away, and that organization's able to grow and continue on the trajectory it was on, or they don't know it's time for them to step away, and the organization just flounders and it doesn't move beyond it.
Right.
Or they want to step away, but they haven't built the people into the organization to help it to continue to grow, which results in lower value when they're trying to exit the business and get somebody else to purchase it. But it also hinders the ability for the organization to really live on after them. And as founders, and I know you feel this for sure, you want to leave a lasting legacy in the business that you found to continue after you're gone.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I always recommend for any business owner, I went through most of my career without ever having a business coach. And I
Mhm.
will say that having a business coach for a couple of years really changed perspective. It wasn't day one because, change is not ever easy. But, when you start realizing what they're helping coach you on, it just takes you to a different level, a different mindset. That
And
and turning gray, that helps too.
that's how you know somebody's been in the industry long enough is they have gray hair or no hair. Absolutely.
Right.
You mentioned business coaches. So if you're looking at developing talent, would you, especially for a new or a middle manager who's trying to climb the ladder and take on more responsibility, do you see a leadership coach or a business coach as a value at that level?
If you don't want to go out and spend all your time and money trying to get an MBA, I definitely think so. I feel a business coach can bring more practical value in how you work within an organization, how you grow yourself, what are the things you should be focusing on. So yeah, I found a lot of value in that. There's no question.
Excellent. And as you know, that's something that Navigate can help our clients with.
I
So
know.
I
I was setting I was
appreciate you sharing that that
I was
that
setting you up for that.
Chris, during our webinar, we emphasized that talent development is a process,
Mhm.
and that managers and leaders they play kind of a vital role in guiding employees through that process and along their journey and setting them up for success. How have you kind of applied that approach within your business?
Yeah, it's a tough thing because you build out these processes within your organization.
Mhm.
Um, again, I think one of the challenges that I personally had is I'm not a great process manager, right? My thoughts and my way that I operate more from the sales perspective, right? Let's build it. But I think what I've always done well is I always hired really good process people to work with me. I There was a book that I read. Oh, now I'm going to forget the name of it. It was wow. I hate that I forget what it was. It was one of these personality type books, right? And it had a test that went with it. Um, uh, Peter Lencioni, is that the guy who wrote the Five
Paul, Paul,
Dysfunctions?
Paul Lencioni, yep.
Yeah. So it was his latest book, and it was like it was all about personalities and people and stuff. And I had my whole team take the quiz on it. And what was funny about the outcome of it, and this was like 2 years ago, but the outcome was, I was like the entrepreneur guy who was like, let's set the vision, let's do this, and everybody else was like process, like let's just take this project and bring it across the finish line, which isn't necessarily the best way to set yourself up because now you've got all these other folks that are, you're the only one creating and everybody else is kind of doing what your creation is. And so building these processes to manage the manager, so to speak, not a strength of mine, but I can definitely see that there's a huge need for the, like again, business coaching that could have probably been something that would have helped me out with in that regard.
Okay. And,
So
and just to circle back, you talked about kind of those work style, that assessment that you took for the team.
yeah,
One of the things that I've seen over the years is kind of getting a balanced plate that aligns the team's work style with the goals of the organization. So if you've got nobody in process and you're a startup business, you're going to struggle when it comes to continuity and consistency.
oh yeah,
If you've got everybody that's focused on discipline and results and rigidity, you're going to struggle when it comes to finding and keeping good people because it's a very difficult environment to stay in for a long period of time. So
yeah.
that the awareness there from you is very insightful.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I said, I didn't do everything perfect, so
Well, life is a learning lesson, Chris, and I think that's one of the things that we like to share, especially when we're talking about building your bench and talent development, is that we, as you said earlier, we want to give people the freedom to struggle, freedom to
yeah,
make mistakes, but also provide them the support from their leaders level so that
exactly.
it's okay to make the mistake. This is how we benefit and grow and move on.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's funny you say that because I just was recently having a conversation with some of the people I work with, and I view my position today as being the guardrails on the bowling alley, just trying to keep everybody out of the gutter enough so that we can, knock it out of the park. So it's a interesting perspective. Yep.
And you know, as you know, here at Navigate, we're big on personal and professional growth, and for us, books are a go-to source of inspiration. You've already mentioned one, but What book are you currently reading that's helping you to grow, whether it's a business related book or professional or personal?
Yeah, so it's funny because, like I said, I've read tons of books over the years, and I've kind of at this point in my career lost interest in the business book because there's a lot of repetition, a lot of things. Everybody's got 6 points to this or 8 points to that, and it's Patrick Lencioni, not Paul. But anyway, I just remember that. I wish I could remember the name of the book because it was really fantastic. I enjoyed it very much because I like his writing style. But just recently, I've switched over to books on tape now because I think that's a super cool way to digest information. Um, Again, laying in bed trying to read, I make it about like 6 minutes and then I'm asleep. But I just recently listened to so being a musician, my favorite band has always been Rush. Geddy Lee put out his memoirs. He was the bass player for Rush, and it's an amazing story of a kid growing up, in Canada, not really in a musical family, but anybody who's a fan of Rush knows he's got a unique voice. They had very unique music. They never really listened to the people that told him, "Oh, you should write more popular music. You should do this." And like he just believed so much in what he was doing and with his band, the stick to itiveness and the extreme work that they put in. It's something that like most people just can't recognize. I mean, going out on tour with a band with music that you basically know is like nobody's really into this. They had to kind of pave their own way into a genre of music, um, and do it for years and years and years. And even having a record company like, yeah, you're done if this next album isn't just like amazing. And they write the most bizarre album they could ever write, which was 2112, and it's a huge success, right? It was just such a great story. And then the trials and tribulations of what happened with the band and all the setbacks that they had and things of that nature. Just it's inspirational, right? Because you think about running a business and managing a band and growing a band. It's just like growing a business. But to their point, when you run a business, you make lots of compromises. They just didn't compromise. They're like, we know we're awesome, and that's all we're ever going to do. Um, I don't know that I would tell anybody right now run your business that way, because you want to make money, and I don't know what your tolerance is for starving. But it was a great book. It was really inspirational and definitely fun to read.
And what I heard you say there that I think is definitely transitional over to business is really um, the self confidence. Be confident in who you are and what you do.
Mhm.
Follow through, right? If you know you have a goal, you make sure you're making progress towards that goal. And also, it's okay to be original. If you're trying to be a thought leader in business, if you want to be a disruptor, that's a great way for you to set your organization up for success. Or if you're somebody that's growing in an industry or in an organization, executive leadership should look for people that think differently because
Yeah.
they may be the ones that set the groundwork for how your company's going to be in 5 or 10 or 20 years.
Exactly. Well, you just made a great point. I've always told people I'm not looking for yes men to sit around me. Challenge everything I say. It's more fun that way, but great ideas and business practices are spawned from having good communicative conversations that there may be disagreements, but at the end of the day, you learn a lot that way. So great point.
That goes back to your comment earlier about making sure you're listening, talking to
Yep.
your team, and listening.
Absolutely.
It, it's been great having you today. I appreciate it. Hopefully, you'll come back and talk with us again.
I'm always available.
All right, Chris. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.